welcome back to Up the Villa podcast. If you're new, subscribe, drop a like, and comment your thoughts on Aston Villa signing Nicolò Zaniolo from Galatasaray. Absolutely love it. Love it. Some positive news which we can all enjoy and embrace. And we haven't really spoken much about him on the channel. We haven't done a transfer hub, but I've got to say it's a player that I'm really excited by because my eyes from seeing him tell me that we've got a player on here, and we've got a player that may not have reached his full potential, but who better to unlock and unleash some potential. I really like the look of him. I like his stature. I like his profile. I like his dribbling ability. He's got a beauty of a left foot. He can strike a ball like an absolute rocket. And yeah, I just think there's some attributes currently in this Villa side that we lack. And I think the first game of the season against Newcastle showed it. I think a player like Joelinton showed me everything that a player like him currently we lack. And I think Zaniolo will bring that vibe, that unpredictability, that bit of aggression, that bit of bite. And I'm really, really excited by this one. So, Justin, how are you feeling?
Yeah, it's a really interesting signing for me. I didn't know a lot about him. I'd heard his name mentioned, and I think I've probably seen him play without realising. He's playing over the last couple of 3-4 years, really, in Italy especially. And as I say, it's a really. The more you delve into this lad, the more really interesting little statistics come up. A prodigious talent as a kid, made his way through youth teams, ended up finding his way to Roma via Inter Milan. I think he was sold to to Roma with a swap deal for Nangolan. I think it is that went the other way. He became the youngest Italian player to score twice in a single match of the Champions League when Roma beat Porto 2-1. I think that was 19 or 20 years of age. So he's got all these little intricacies in his career. I think we'll probably go on to talk about his injury record in a bit. He's had a couple of bad injuries. And he also scored the winning goal, in the Europa League final, didn't he, against Feyenoord, which I've just had a quick look at. So he's got a knack of scoring, goals in big games. I like his profile, like you say. His stature is a big lad, all left-footed, can play numerous positions, and I like that. Depending on who you believe, it's obviously a loan deal. Is it going to be a mandatory, or is it going to be whether we decide to make it a permanent at the end of it? I hope it's the latter. I hope we get to make the decision. It's not up front. But everything about him oozes quality. 24 years of age, perfect age, like you say. Emery obviously fancies getting his teeth stuck into him and trying to reinvigorate his career. He had to leave Roma. I think there was a bit of a contract dispute there, and he ended up getting chased out of Italy by the Ultras. He won't be the first. He certainly won't be the last player that to happen to. So he found his way over to Galatasaray. Not a bad spell over there. Hasn't played loads of games for them. I think he scored like 5 goals in 11 games from last season. They won the title. Stayed fairly fit there. Probably his best spell of his career fitness-wise. No real bad injuries over there or even little niggles that you've seen before that. So I think we're signing a player that has got a high ceiling. And like you said at the start, has yet to probably achieve what he wants to in his career, and he seems to have a bit of an edge about him. He seems to be, back himself, which I like. I've got a bit of a quiz question for you at the end about Italian players coming to Villa, so I'll drop that in right at the end. Not a bad scoring ratio throughout his career as a sort of attacking midfielder. Has never really played as an out-and-out forward, so you wouldn't expect his goal scoring to be massive. But I think he's got a 1 in 5 throughout his whole career, everybody's been to. But again, he's only 24, so if we can keep him fit, if we can keep him and get that level anywhere near, I think what his top level is, I think we're signing a really good player at Villa. and I'm really looking forward to seeing him play because I think he would slot in really nicely with where we are at the moment.
Yeah. I'm excited by it. I really am excited. So we'll have a little look at some of his stats, etc. And we'll go from there as well then. So if we have a little look at Zaniolo then. So this is what I've got my eye on. He has won the Europa Conference League already with Roma. So amount of experience in a competition that we are currently in. So, I mean, you can't ask for no better here, can you? And in that tournament and in that cup, he scored 5 goals and he'd got 4 assists. And like you say, a lot of his numbers are a bit scatty here and there. Like that they're in they're not as high as what I imagine a lot of Villa fans would potentially want.
No, they're not, but I think what you have to take into account is these two, and you can't not talk about it, these two cruciate ligament injuries he had, both looking at it either side of COVID. So he had one before in January 2020, an anterior cruciate ligament, and he was back training in June that year. So he was out for about 6 months, and then he missed the whole season of 2021 through another anterior cruciate ligament injury. So you wouldn't expect those. I think the figures aren't probably where they would be. Staff think so without those injuries, but I think his levels are higher than the figures suggest because of this time he spent out of the game. There's reasons why someone like Jose wanted to get him in at Roma, and he played a lot there and he won things there. And I think what Unai is seeing is like we've said a couple of times already, that there's a big high ceiling to this player, and if anybody can unlock him, I'd be lying if I said I didn't think it was a small gamble. Based on his injury record and based on his career up to now, it's been very topsy-turvy. I have no doubt there's a player there that could explode, and this is what obviously as fans you hope to pin to. I think there is a player there that could really, really do well, and I think the Premier League will probably suit his style as well. As I say, 6'3", he's not going to come in and get knocked off the ball. He's going to really hope to stamp himself all over this team, and it's something we really need, somebody with a bit of something about them in that final third. We've got players of quality. Diaby, obviously one of them. Watkins on his day, but you throw a player like this in, a bit of a maverick who can maybe unlock people and bang one in from 30 yards. We haven't got one of those players really, have we, at the moment? So I'm all for it. I think it's a good acquisition, alone with a view to a permanent if he produces. There's not a lot not to like, really.
No. And it does feel like the player from the start has been very keen to move to Aston Villa as well, which again is a big plus point, because the amount of comments that we get in the comment sections where we get like João Felix, like we've offered it him, but he don't want to come, and fans will say, well, if you don't want to come, then we don't want him. So at least with this one, it feels like he really wants to come from what you've seen from sort of like the media speculation as well. And also,
go on.
It feels as well like, I remember at the start of the window, we were all for as well, like Emery signing like a couple of little gems that no one sort of wanted, like would say was like prime time top target. So the fact that it's like this player that has got so much potential and such a high ceiling, I think we kind of need it. And like you say about like, he's got an edge to him. I think the squad needs it. It needs that edge. It needs that sort of. It's hard. It's really hard to explain what I think. We at times I still think we're quite nice, and I think he adds. Although he's not sort of like a defensive destroyer, if you watch clips or whatever of his overall game, he's very strong and very direct, and I think he, that type of player, when he's dribbling, he's just bumping players off, and he takes no messing basically, and I really do think that type of player, and whether it's it's not a discipline problem, but it's sort of like, don't mess with me, and that's what
No,
we need.
you've seen these over the years. What kick-started Man United all them years ago? Yeah, they signed Eric Cantona. I'm not suggesting he's going to be our Eric Cantona. I mean, who knows? But that kind of bit of a maverick type, played in the final third, had a bit of an edge to him. You didn't want to get on the wrong side of him, as you saw what happened in his career. Jumping into the crowd, he did have that red mist that would sort of descend every now and again. And whilst you have to be very careful with these players, you can't just throw a grenade into the dressing room and everything blow up, because we have got what seems to be a really decent dressing room atmosphere at the moment. So you don't want to rock that, but I don't think there's anything wrong with throwing a little bit of a left field sort of player in. And from what I've seen, I mean, I might be totally wrong. These are just from reading about him and watching him and seeing how he plays. That's the sort of vibe I'm getting. And for him now, to get this opportunity to come to the Premier League, to a club that's really aspiring to kick on now, and is in Europe and wants to finish in the high end of the Premier League and has got a high profile now as well. I think that excites him. I think that's what's probably driven him to maybe make this deal happen. So I think it's a good deal for him. I think we've boxed clever a little bit with the financial side of things as well, because we will never know whether this deal would have happened if Buendia hadn't have got injured. I tend to lean into the thought process that because of the way this deal's structured loan-wise with a view to buy at the end of the season, it probably wouldn't maybe have happened if we hadn't got that spot to
See,
fill in the team.
I kind of think it might have done, because we
Even
were
if
linked
Buendia
with
was
him
fit.
because we were linked with him at the start of the window. So I kind of feel like it might have been one of them where we went in towards the very, very end of it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I
It's a
think it's
difficult one
very
to judge, isn't
strange.
it?
Yeah, I think it's very strange that we were linked at the start. It did speed up the day after Buendia got injured, but I don't know. He didn't really take much. Like I said earlier, like it really feels like he snapped at the chance to come. So I
But it
feel
could have
like
been
there
like
might
one
have
of them.
been.
Yeah, it could have been like one of them deals where you sort of hear, which we do all the time. We hear numerous players getting thrown out, and it's their agents leaking things. And I would imagine Villa have inquired about a ton of players this window. It's just quietly on the side, little messages to agents and stuff. And maybe this is one that sneaked out. And there was a bit of legs in it early on, and perhaps they decided not to go ahead with it because they were happy with the Diaby signing. Maybe he was surprised with Villa Bidace on the tour and thought, you know what, I think we're okay there. We're going to add this and this, but that's okay. And then when the Buendia situation appeared and his injury happened, they probably went and revisited it again and thought, you know what, that player really does suit what we need now in that area, and we can get him in for 12 months, have a really good look at him, and jettison out some of the sort of dead wood at the bottom of it. I'm thinking like the Traores and probably eventually, like we spoke the other day about the Baileys. So we need a player to come in and spark us, and this could be that player. It really could, to get people excited.
It does. So we'll have a quick little look before we round off then at where we sort of expect him to fit in and feature then, if we're going to go with something similar to what we have been doing. Predominantly mainly all through his career, he has played on that sort of right-hand side. But another interesting point that when he was at Roma as well, there was talk of him being the new Totti. So, I mean, that's some accolade to have him. But through his career, he does tend to sort of drift in and he can play a little bit more central. So for me, I think either side here, I think I could see him playing sort of in that Ramsey role or that McGinn role. Potentially, if needs be, he could potentially play off a Watkins as well, because if you look at some of his goals, they have come from being in very high up advanced positions, off the shoulder, making runs through the lines, breaking through centre backs, and running through on goal as well. So I think anywhere across this front line is where we could see him playing. Would you agree, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, from the sort of research I've done on him, it does seem he can play in numerous, versatile, creative, technical, good work rate, good energy, attacking midfielder. box to box, deep line playmaker. So which would tie into sort of all those positions in behind Watkins, really, wouldn't it? Anywhere in advance of the double pivot, I would say. So old fashioned 8s, 10s, wingers cutting in off the flanks with his, and even look, we've seen this sort of Diaby role, which is off Watkins. You could see him filling that flank, that sort of. That role as well, and if he does settle and he does really well, and depending on what we do on with the centre forward sort of position, he's another player that could potentially maybe even fill that gap up top if we did find ourselves in a little bit of a pickle, with the centre forward missing. So I think he does. We know Emery likes players that can sort of play numerous positions and are very flexible. Not just game to game, but in game as well. He could start here and then, something's not working, so he could move him across there, switch with players, switch flanks. I don't know. He does seem a player that would sit very, very comfortably within what we are trying to achieve on the pitch.
Definitely. And I feel good about this signing.
Yeah.
So I think that's a real positive
Ultimately,
thing, isn't it?
yeah. Ultimately, look, every single signing is a risk, isn't it? Because as we've seen this week, you can get injured straight away. Things can happen. So, based on everything that we've gone through and everything I've read, I think it is well worth the gamble on him. I think.
Yeah, and like a little caveat to the Emery's window so far of players that Emery's brought in, they've all been decent. Do you know what I mean? I'm not, I think they've all been
they've all been at that quality.
Moreno, Tielemans, Diaby, Pau Torres. Have I missed Duran? But I'm not sure whether that was an Unai. But okay, a lot of potential yet to see anything. So far, the bulk of Emery signings have all been really good players. So I very much trust Unai's judgment and Monchi when signing players. So if they're happy, I'm happy. So there we go.
I've got one other thing for you. Now he will become, and I'm sure if I'm wrong, people will pick me up on this in the comments. He's going to become our 4th ever Italian player to sign for Villa. Can you name the other 3? You should get 2 of them, but I'm not sure you'll get the 3rd.
I'm gonna say, you stitched me here. I'm gonna say 2 of them. Galini.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good one.
Okay.
One a bit further back.
Right.
One a bit further back. Forward. Yeah. Scored a hat-trick in a FA Cup game. Signed him from Sheffield Wednesday.
Get another clue.
A little bloke with good hair. You'd like him with his good hair.
Good hair?
Yeah. Do you want me to tell you?
Go on then, don't know.
Benito Carboni.
Oh, Christ.
Knew you'd get annoyed about that. You had a blank on it.
Christ.
And the only other one I found in Villa's history, a player I remember never actually made a first team appearance for Villa, but came as a youth team product and everybody raved about him, was Fabio, I hope I get this last one right, Fabarese. Now, I remember him playing a few pre-season games and he never actually did anything for us. But that only the 4th ever Italian player ever to play for Villa. So that's quite an interesting stat, that is, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
Let's hope he's the best Italian that's ever played for us.
Let's hope so, Justin. Thanks, everybody. Up the Villa.
Up the Villa.